All right, what's up out there? How you guys doing? I'm great, Jacob. How are you, bud? You doing all right? Hope everybody's kind of keeping on out there, staying safe, doing all the things that you need to do to get through what's kind of going on right now in unprecedented time that we're going through and dealing with all the things that we're dealing with. So hope you're managing to get by day and talk a little bit, talk some football stuff for a little while to kind of take our mind off some stuff. Yeah, we have some big problems here in the United States as well with some things. But Yeah, everything. Our schools are canceled. Our spring sports are canceled. Our spring football's canceled. So I don't know if we're going back to school at all in the state of Florida. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it. But if we can take some time now just to talk some football and I figured maybe RPOs would be a good topic tonight for anybody that's interested in talking RPOs and run pass options and what you're trying to do with them and how you're trying to use them and what they are and what they aren't. So, hey, Arthur, how you doing, bud? RPOs sometimes can be a little bit misused term. Sometimes, even announcers in NFL football games, anything that might even look like an RPO, they call everything an RPO play or a run pass option. Sometimes they call play action passes RPOs. It's gotten a little bit crazy with they've been kind of a buzz the last 2, 3, 4 years or something like that. So figured what runs would you have tagged to it, Daniel, if they're double screen options? What usually double screens would be PPOs, which are pass options. So you would have, you screen to each side, and based on a certain defender you might be looking at or certain numbers you get, you would choose one screen over the other. I've never really seen per se. I've never really seen a double screen tagged to a run, depending on what you're considering actual screenplays. Yeah, I mean, I guess if there's a to me, the weird thing would be if there's a certain movement key with screens going on both sides. Hey, Coach Gardner, how you doing, buddy? Still cold in Utah or somewhere out there? I know you are. Um, Usually if you had a screen on each side based off a movement key, you would be choosing one screen over the other, not necessarily choosing a screen or a QB run. Normally, I would think for the most part, an RPO with a screen would be setting some type of receiver screen up. But if you get numbers that way or a certain Mike or Sam linebacker movement, and you then set up to run a quarterback draw, I could see something along those lines. But I've never really seen a true RPO that might be a run with double screens on each side. That would be kind of new to me, based on what I think RPOs actually are. I've seen plenty of PPOs, pass options, where, like I said, you've got maybe a fast receiver screen on one side with a slow tailback screen on another side, and based on the numbers or movement of a certain linebacker, you might choose. Um, yeah, now, Arthur, it's funny you say that. I am depending on how you're reading those things. I do not consider any of our screen game attached to our run game. I don't really consider those part of our RPOs. I consider them part of our option package. So our RPOs are more run game tied to a certain defender that might be extra that we can't block. And then normally we're going to throw the ball past the line of scrimmage. We're very rarely going to run our RPOs where we throw it some type of stand up or smoke screen outside. When we do that, when we tag our stand ups or our back outs, I actually consider that part of our triple option deal. So if we were running zone read and we read the end and the quarterback pulled and we had some type of stand up screen or back out screen going on, what I call key screens that I've done several videos on, and I took that term from Noel Mazzone. I didn't invent it. I took it from stuff that he was doing at Arizona State back in the day, and UCLA, and then Arizona, and all the places, Texas A&M, all the places he's been. But we would consider that triple option football. I wouldn't consider that RPOs. RPOs for me are post snap reads of a second or third level defender that we are going to throw the ball down the field after we make that read. That's just me. Yeah, RPO is good off inside trap if you feel like your trap stop from the shotgun can hit quick enough. Then obviously it's just a matter of numbers, especially 2 by 2. If you get a 5-man box, traps are really good to block 5-man boxes, and then just read an overhang to the front side to see if he folds in to try and fit the trap play. You can just throw a spot, a snag, or anything right behind him. Um, what do you consider peak, Arthur? I've heard the term used a million times, but you'd have to tell me what you consider peak. We don't really worry so much about the lineman getting to the next level when we throw the ball. It's not like the passing game where we're trying to teach linemen to cover up. We want our linemen solely focused on the run that we have called, so that the linemen have no idea if you're going to give that ball or throw it. They're not reading anybody. They're blocking certain combinations or whatever the run scheme may be that they're blocking, and you want them to block that effectively because the quarterback's going to be the one that decides where the ball goes. So our linemen really have no idea whether we're going to give it or throw it. So I just want them focused on the run that they're blocking, and the only thing they're worried about on climbing is if we if we are doubling to the next level or something like that. That's the only reason we're worried about climbing per se. We're not really worried about climbing to cover up in the passing game. Yeah, anytime you pull some, I mean, as long as the rules stay what they are with 3 yards downfield, and it's a gray area for officials to call. Anytime you pull somebody, anytime you pull somebody and you make it a pain in the neck for the read keys. I mean, that's really what you're trying to do. You're trying to get certain people to fit runs and make them believe that it's run, and then you're throwing off of that. But a lot of the times for us, if we're RPOing an overhang or an apex player, your inside backers can read pullers and fit the run the way they normally would, and we wouldn't be throwing off of them. The only time we throw a pop pass to our sniffer off of a linebacker movement, and then we had some buck sweep RPOs that we uh, that we carried simply for that fact. We had some linebackers that were really running um, when we pulled our guards on buck sweep stuff. So we started throwing some routes behind our buck sweep stuff just to keep those linebackers honest. Um, I'm new to learning passing schemes. Do you look at the coverage while you're faking the handoff or right before? What do you now? You usually have one key defender that you're looking at. You're not really per se looking at coverage. It's one defender with a route combination that's built to take advantage of that defender. You're trying to find one guy that you think is in the run fit for the defense, but also has a zone pass responsibility. And if that guy fits the run, then you're trying to run routes that vacate the spot that he's supposed to cover in that zone theory, whether it be cover two, cover three, quarters, two read, whatever the coverage is. As long as it's a zone coverage, and you take a guy that's a run fitter and you read how he fits the run, and then you throw the ball into the void that he created by fitting the run. That's what basically in general RPOs are. So um, you don't necessarily it's not faking a handoff. It's actually riding and possibly giving the ball, and then based on a defender, it's pulling and throwing from there. Thanks, Coach McManus. I appreciate it. You too, bud. Yeah, you can. It's not impossible to. It's not impossible to run quarterback runs with RPOs. Usually, you would take some type of punch one or some type of trigger step to throw the ball, and then if you make a read on somebody that leaves, then the quarterback can run his draw, QB power, whatever you want to run. So no, quarterback runs are not alienated from RPOs. So you can have quarterback runs with RPOs. You can have any runs you want really, as long as you understand the route concepts that you're tagging with the RPO and who you're trying to go after. Are you practicing your cues? We do it. We do it in some half line stuff where we physically block some things, and then quarterback we mesh with the back, and we block some half line stuff, and then we read an overhang or somebody, and we run the routes behind that. So we do it, and we do some mesh stuff in individual, and then in some time with the running backs, and then we do some half line stuff. But if you're going to be an RPO team, it's got to be, what we do is we make team sessions that are RPOs only, because for us, you're welcome, Jamar. For us, usually on the front side or on the back side, away from the RPO, we have access throws or gift routes to receivers in case we get loaded boxes. So we have to do a lot of our RPO stuff in a team period. So what I like to do is I like to take a 10-minute team period. Yeah, it's actually better, in my opinion, Hunter, if you want to look at RPOs, watch more college football than NFL football. There's RPOs in NFL football, but I think NFL football is more man stuff than zone stuff, so they're not as prevalent. I think the college game is a little bit better, in my opinion. Watch more college football if you want to learn more about RPOs. But you know, getting back to the point about practice, we usually have a team period that'll be nothing but RPO plays only, because I need my quarterback to read all 11 defenders or see all 11 defenders on the field, so that if I give him a loaded box that we can't block that run against, he's got to be able to take the gift or the access throw without going through the RPO play. If I give him a box that's conducive to blocking the RPO, now I need him to go through reading the movement key or the conflict defender to run that RPO. So we practice it in some half line stuff, and then we also work on it a bunch in team periods that are specifically RPO periods. What percentage of your RPOs are pre-snap? RPOs to me, Coach Klee, this is just me personally. RPOs are all post-snap reads for us. We don't consider anything that's a pre-snap read for me is either a gift or an access throw. I do not consider, even though I know the term RPO means run pass option, I break things up a little bit differently. For me, offensively, when I'm talking to players and coaches and things like that, to me, RPOs are purely post-snap reads on a conflict defender. If we choose to throw some type of stand-up or smoke screen or access throw, a hitch or an out or a slant or a fade or whatever the access may be, if we choose that pre-snap, I don't consider that part of our RPO deal. That's just me. That's not. There's other people in general that would, call a stand-up screen part of their RPOs, and that's fine. There's not a wrong or a right answer. But for me, I have things that I tie to our triple option game with screens, and then I have things that I tie to what I consider access and gifts, and then I have things that I consider actual RPOs. So for me, if you were speaking RPOs, it is post-snap reads only. Yeah, LSU was good with some of their RPOs. They were a big duo run team, which is basically power without a puller. So they were a big duo gap scheme, and then making some reads off that. So they did a pretty good job with it. I think the personnel they had helped a bunch. Overhangs are apex player, if I'm not mistaken, or the reads. They don't have to be. For me, overhangs and apex players are probably they're probably the read 75 to 80% of the time, and then the inside backers are usually the read maybe the other 20-25% of the time. So they don't have to be overhangs. It just usually works out that the overhangs are easy players to conflict because they're usually the extra fitter in the run game. So normally with the two, if you're looking at like a 4-2 box for argument's sake, normally the two backers that are in the box you can block. So you're not necessarily always looking to RPO of them because you can block them. It's the extra defenders that you can't block. Those are the guys that you want to RPO off of, because the reason you're doing it is to actually read a guy that you're not blocking and take that extra helmet out of the run game. That's, to me, why RPOs were even created in the first place. So most of the time for us, it's going to be an overhang, yes. We do run snag as an RPO. A lot of times we'll just run stick or hitch by number 2. We'll run snag by number 1 if we want to. If our number 1 is a really good player and we want to have a way to RPO the same concept and get him the ball, we'll run snag. We'll run fin by number 1 with a corner by number 2, reading off an overhang. So a couple different ways to do it. We try not to get too fancy with the route combinations, because at the end of the day, all you're really trying to do is put a player in a spot that a defender has to vacate to play the run and throw the ball there. So I think some guys get a little crazy with their route combinations. And to me, it's really not about the route combination per se. It's about putting somebody in an area vacated or voided by the defense. So that to me is in its simplest form. That's what you should be doing. We'll cut his split a little bit, but we don't cut it we try not to cut his split dramatically because I think a lot of defensive coordinators are smart enough to look at your splits and who's on the ball and who's off the ball and who your best receivers are. Are they at number one or number two? And a lot of times you'll do things where you'll move your best receivers around, but when you do that, you only run certain plays, or a lot of times you'll put a guy on the ball and another guy off the ball, and then you kind of realize that that guy's going vertical or doing something because of where he is. So we try not to change. We try not to change it too much. We The only reason we'd use different fronts is so that the O line can get used to blocking either an odd front or an open B gap. So there's a one technique, a five technique, and a backer, or there's a three, a five, and a backer, or there's an odd look. But changing the front really wouldn't change the defender that we're reading in the RPO. So if we went half line and changed the front, we would change the front just so the O line gets used to blocking different looks. We wouldn't half line change the front so that we change who we're reading. Um, we to the single side, we run some glance, more of a five-step slant or a short post than we do slant routes. We don't run a lot of slant routes in our RPO game because I think a lot of times to the two receiver side, if you're RPOing off an overhang and you start running slant routes which move inside, I think you start moving into other defenders. So a lot of time we're going to run sticks or hitches or fins or snags or things of that nature. Now, to the single, our best RPO is five-step glance off of any isolation or kick theories, or reading off an overhang defender weak that's trying to get an extra hat in the box and putting all the stress on that corner. That's part of our best RPO theory is glances to number one, but very rarely to the two receiver side do we run. The only time we ever ran slant type stuff is when we're going to read an inside backer. So now when he vacates, we can get a receiver into that area. But if we're reading overhangs, we very rarely run slants. We don't see a lot of cover two, Coach Gardner. We see a lot of two read or a lot of quarters toolbox stuff. We don't see a lot of true cover two. I think the hash marks. I think where the ball is on a hash mark in high school, the cover two defenders are way too far. In a true cover two defense, the corner is actually the primary force player, and that safety shouldn't be involved in a run fit until secondary or late. So a lot of times, if they have an apex defender that you can block, and then that corner is the force player, the ball on a hash mark in high school is, and even in the middle, sometimes the corners are so far removed from being force players that we don't see a lot of. We'll see cover two into the boundary a bunch for sure, but we don't see it middle of the field and to the field. We don't see cover two a lot. Any drills where the quarterback can mesh with a back so you can get your footwork and your timing and your meshes done, because RPO football is basically option football. So you have to spend a lot of time making sure that the meshes are proper because you're actually going to be reading somebody post snap. So you don't want the ball on the ground when you're using RPOs. So I look at RPOs just like triple option. You have to work on the mesh, the mesh and then the pitch phase. Well, in RPO, you got to work on the mesh and then the throw phase. So it's really, it's double option football, in my opinion. RPOs are option football. I know a lot of option guys get crazy and they say that RPOs aren't option football, but it's 100% option football. You're reading a defender and doing something with the football based on what that defender does. I don't think you can get a truer definition of option football than that. So I've seen a lot of guys run sprint out RPOs where they have like quarterback outside zone on with some type of flood concept or some type of outside concept with a movement key. And if that key comes up to play the outside zone, they throw the ball. If that movement key doesn't play the outside zone, the quarterback runs outside zone. So, I've seen some outside zone runs with quarterbacks kind of tag the sprint out theories that are RPOs. And most of your quarterback runs that are RPOs are usually going to be quarterback runs in the box most of the time. But I have seen some outside zone stuff with quarterbacks and then tying that into either flood concepts or smash concepts. So yeah, I've seen it trying to get him. If you wanted to get him in space, that's what I'd be doing. We basically, to be honest, Hunt. We basically run hitch. We run hitches or we run go routes. That's basically what we do. If it's soft coverage and they're off, we're going to run a hitch. If it's press coverage and they're taking something away, we're going to run a go route. And we try not to get into a lot of different routes for the single because then I feel like there's too much confusion and you end up throwing around. The quarterback throws a hitch and he runs something else. So we kind of keep it simple for our guys to keep the consistency going. We run We run hitches and basically fades or go routes on our access side. We're going back to inside zone and wide zone. If you're asking me, Harold, we're going back to inside zone, wide zone, and a little bit more counter. Inside zone will be our RPO stuff. Wide zone will be our movement passes and then our action passes, and then we'll do some RPO stuff off a counter. But that's where we're going. If you want to consider it a third level defender, Coach Gardner, yes, on the weak side, a lot of the times we'll read that third level defender that rolls down to become the eighth player in the box. So when we read him, I think he's actually a second level defender, but I know that would be considered a third level read. We do not do anything currently on the two receiver side. We don't do anything reading third level for downfield shots like post routes or things like that. We haven't done any of that yet, no. But to the single side, we technically read a third level defender, yes. You are welcome, Mr. O'Shea. Thank you for joining. Primary read to outside for pick. Explain that a little bit better, Hunter. I'm a little bit confused. Primary read to outside for pick. I don't know what that means. So if you explain that better, I'll try and answer you. Air raid offense. There is a belief that the RPO game is dead in the air raid. Your thought? I don't think the RPO game is dead in the air raid at all. I think the air raid to me is a philosophy more than it is an offense. So, they have certain things that they're trying to do and certain repetitions within the routes that they're running that they're trying to get. The only reason for true air raid people, philosophically, they're going to throw the ball 45 to 50 times and they're not going to carry some of the runs that you need to be conducive to RPOs. But, if you look at somebody like Lincoln Riley, who's kind of combined offenses with air raid principles and how good Oklahoma's been with GT counter and RPOs to the sniffer. And to me, that's an air raid guy. He's always been an air raid guy. He's part of the air raid family, but he branched off a little bit. But, the true air raid guys like Mike Leach, I just think it's that they don't carry enough in their run game and they don't want to spend that extra time in the run game to take reps away from their actual air raid philosophy. That's the only reason I think I think you don't see that. That's just my opinion, though. Have a slot receiver go outside and outside receiver go inside to pick, get ball out quick and turn upfield. Yeah, the only reason you'd be picking anything, Hunter, is if you're expecting man coverage. And if you're expecting man coverage, then a lot of the times your RPOs really aren't great theories because there is no conflict defender. If a guy's playing man on a receiver and he's not involved in a run fit, and that's the guy you're reading, most of the time you're either going to end up giving the ball or if it's loaded box, you're going to do something else. When you're anticipating man and you want to run picks and rubs, I would go more play action pass than RPO because if you're anticipating man is really not a great RPO deal because there is no true conflict player. If you're reading a guy on a slot and he's playing man on a slot, he's going to cover the slot, which means you're going to hand the ball off of him every time. You would never pull and throw the RPO. So if you're expecting man coverage, which because of the RPO game, I think you're going to get a lot of man coverage. So as an offensive coordinator, you've already won half the battle because if you can dictate coverages to a defensive coordinator, to me, then I think you've won half the battle. So by playing man, they'll take away some RPOs, but now you go to all your man beaters, and I would run them off of play action if I know I'm getting man. I wouldn't even bother with any of my RPO deals. When you're going to glance and single, what do you like having the Twins trips run? Anybody to the Twins trip is going to run access throws. So if we get a loaded box pre-snap, we're going to throw the ball to the access side. So anytime you are running, for me, anytime we're running RPOs on one side, we're running gifts or access on the other, so that if we get a box that we don't like because we're a tempo team, we don't give the quarterback multiple plays on the ball. We give him a play with multiple options. So when the ball snapped, the quarterback's got to get me in and out of the right theory in that play. He's got to put the ball where it belongs. So if we get loaded boxes, we're going to throw gifts or accesses. So if we're going to RPO to the single, then the guys on the other side are running the gifts or access throws that the quarterback can take. Who are you looking to for information on the count of Oklahoma or something? Anybody in general. I study anything. I don't know anybody in the college game personally. I don't go visit and sit with anybody. I just watch, and I actually don't even have a ton of. There's a bunch of all 22 stuff that people have shared on Google Drive that I have, but I'm a YouTube guy. Always been a YouTube guy. I just YouTube people I want to watch, and I watch them, and I go back and I break it down to the best of my ability. So I think Oklahoma is pretty good for GT counter, but other than that, I just kind of study the play itself. I don't really go to one particular team for GT counter. Harold, Malzahn, Norvell, or Riley for me. Yeah, they're all kind of different guys. Malzahn is the furthest thing from air raid you can imagine. Malzahn's a wing T guy, in theory. I don't know who Harold is that you're talking about. Mike Norvell is a little bit different. I wouldn't consider him true air raid, but very good coach in his own right. And Lincoln Riley is air raid by birth or by trade, but then he's gone away from the air raid to me create one of the most explosive offensive systems. And I don't know if it has a name or it wants a name, but all the stuff that Lincoln Riley's been able to do within air raid principles is phenomenal. So I think to me, he's done the best breaking away from true air raid stuff. Um, this past year, Baylor was really good with RPOs. Alabama was pretty good with RPOs. I think you can watch a ton of teams in college that were really good with RPO stuff. Um, but those are all pretty good choices right now. I think Ohio State does some RPO. Every college runs them, so just look for the teams that are the best offensively as far as explosive plays and run game and pass game, and search them. Clemson's always been good at it, so I don't think you can go wrong studying any of those teams. From the defensive side, Daniel, you got to understand who they're trying to RPO and make them slower into the run fit. So based on where the back is or how they're trying to mesh things, take the guy to the side of the back and make him a little bit slower in the run fit. So play some fronts that are conducive to him not having an immediate fall in gap. Because on offense, those are the guys you want to pick on. So if you have if you're in 2x2 and there's an open B gap, if if you're in 2x2 and there's an open B gap, you want to RPO the overhang to the open B gap because he has to fill without any defensive line stunts. He's got to fit the open B gap and run, and he's got to play hook curl or whatever he's got to play and pass. So defensively, man to man will take away RPO stuff in general just because there won't be any conflict defenders, but man to man is going to give you other problems that you got to deal with. So, as far as zone coverage stuff, you've got to run some line games and eliminate gaps, force the ball wider so that those defenders can sit longer in throwing windows and send the ball out to them so they don't have to fold in. So be careful with the front, be careful where you have your open gaps. And then if there is a guy that might be in a situation that he's a little bit conflicted, run some line games to take away some gaps and push the ball one gap further out to him and make him a C gap player, not a B gap player. Those are the easiest ways to defend it. I don't know who Graham Harold is either. I don't know who Graham Harold is. I don't know. So sorry, I don't. You didn't. I'm not confused. I wasn't necessarily confused, Arthur. I just didn't know really who you were talking about. But all the points you made so far have been good, valid points. So don't feel bad about anything you've said so far. But Graham Harrell is the USC offensive coordinator. Harrell. Graham Harrell. He's a Texas Tech guy. He's probably a Texas Tech quarterback and comes from that family back in the Texas Tech early days. He was probably one of the, I don't want to say original, but one of the better quarterbacks early on in the Texas Tech days when they really started making a name for themselves. That's who the USC offensive coordinator is. But I think it's Harrell, Graham Harrell, I think. I'm not sure. But I think he wore number 6 in college playing for Texas Tech. But yeah, he's pretty good. He's a hot name right now. So what else have you guys been looking at over your downtime? Anything else you've been studying you want to talk about, or anything else you've been thinking about studying that you want to talk about? We really don't have a plan right now, Daniel. I really haven't even. I've talked individually to some of my players, but as a team, I haven't really talked to my players. The biggest thing I'm taking from this right now is I'm trying to tell players that I talk to enjoy the downtime because once football starts, it's a grind, and a lot of times you take for granted the fact that football is kind of a instead of an extracurricular activity, some people think it's kind of a given right to them, and then when somebody takes it, something like the coronavirus takes it away, now all of a sudden you miss it so much. So, I'm trying to tell our guys, focus on your schoolwork, your online stuff, and then understand when it comes time, when we get through all this and this too shall pass, and when it does, when it comes time to go back to work, let's get back to work, but let's not rush. I think too many football coaches get all bent out of shape with free time and they want to, they're so concerned with what their team's doing. To me, right now, the best thing you can do is everybody take a break, stay healthy, do the things you need to do to get this thing out of the way. And when we get back to football, let's go then. So I think in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to create either a Google Classroom or I'm going to do some install stuff on Huddle to start getting ready for the summer. But I don't think we're going to be back in school anytime soon, at least for 4 to 6 weeks, if that. We may not even go back to school. So I'm really not even, I'm not worried about spring ball right now. I'm not even worried about football for our team in general right now. I'm trying to get our kids to understand how good they have it with the game of football. And now that it's been taken away from you, when we do come back, don't waste your time, don't waste your effort, because a lot of you guys take it for granted. And even coaches, you take for granted that football is always going to be there. Now that football's not there, it's great to learn. It's great to share information, but slow down a little bit, because the grind and winning and losing and the pressures on football coaches is so big nowadays. Now that we don't have any of that going on, just relax a little bit. And so I haven't really done anything with my team. I know that might sound crazy to some people, but I'm just trying to relax right now, because most of the time in my life, there's so much pressure on running a program and winning and losing and raising money. And I'm just enjoying the fact right now that there's no pressure on anything other than trying to stay healthy and, get this thing to run its course and do what it needs to do so we can get back. Yeah, Kingsbury's done a good job. I mean, I think he's a little bit overhyped at times. You know, I know Texas Tech doesn't have the same caliber players all the time as everybody else, but I think he did a lot of great things offensively, and obviously his lineage to the quarterbacks that he had, and having Patrick Mahomes and guys like that. Um, I think that's what got him to the forefront more so than anything else. And guys maybe in the NFL got enamored with air raid stuff, but to be honest with you, I don't think his results at Texas Tech really garnered him the opportunity to be an NFL football coach. They didn't win an inordinate amount of games at Texas Tech when he was there. I don't think. I think Mike Leach did way more at Texas Tech than Kingsbury did. We run a sniffer vertical RPO, Daniel, off of our inside zone or duo run game, and we read, instead of blocking the linebacker on an ISO type deal, we read that linebacker and send a sniffer vertical. If it's split field coverage, if it's one high, it's not the greatest play in the world because you run straight into that one high safety. But if it's split field, two high stuff with the middle of the field open, um, we certainly run sniffer pop passes and sniffer verticals as RPOs, and have actually scored a few touchdowns the last 3 years on them. So we'll run the sniffer to the flat and RPO that off a backer, and then we'll run them vertical and RPO that. So cataloging passing concepts, and yeah, that's not a bad idea, Harold, to catalog passing concepts. Not a bad idea at all. Thing with passing concepts is don't get carried away and try and run too many, because you don't need. Guys get carried away and try and run 50 concepts. You can't throw the ball that many times. You can't protect that long. Find the concepts you like, keep them to where they're categorized to attack coverages, and don't get carried away. I don't know, going back again, guys, if you're new to live chat stuff, there's a thing called super chats, where for a monetary amount you donate an amount, and then your chat with your name stays labeled so I can see it. Because like now I got to go back to what Arthur Williams said, the Go-Go Offense by Brennan Marion. I have no idea what that is, Arthur, so I can't help you. I'm sorry. Coach Andrea, I hope you're doing all right, bud, and staying safe. Local coach in my area. How so do you want to protect the snag concept? We have a bunch of different tags built in off the snag theory that we run. We'll run it with a spot route and make it a spacing concept. We'll run it with a wheel route and make it a rub concept. We'll run number 2 on a corner post off of our regular snag corner route. We'll run snag and go by number 1. So we have a bunch of different tags to protect it, if that's what you're talking about. Man beaters for us is anything that we can get rubs and picks on, anything that we can isolate our best players on, any double move, type routes. If we can protect it long enough, anything that's a double move, anything that creates rubs or picks, those are the things that you want to try and do. If you carry mesh is always going to be a great man beater. If you have other ways to get your back out of the backfield and set up picks to the single side, if you can run snag or an inside quick slant and try and pick a linebacker and run a wheel or a flat route with a back. So anything that's going to create rubs for those man defenders, anything that's a double move that you can throw down the field, that's the best man stuff you want to be using. there's a ton of option teams that win state titles every year, Jordan. So option football is still very good in high school. Option football on defense is all assignment orientated, and a lot of times high school kids have a tendency. A lot of high school kids have a tendency to peek where the ball is and where they think the ball is. So option football causes a lot of problems in high school. So I would think that I would think that it's more than feasible to run an option offense and win a lot of football games. I never audible out of anything, Hunter. We don't carry audibles in our offense. We try to play at a faster tempo, and we try to carry answers in all of our run games that give the quarterback a chance to do something versus a loaded box. So we never audible. Okay, Arthur, I got it. I might check that out then. Um, we're not an audible team. We'll do some check with me stuff at the line, but we don't have audibles. We're a tempo team, and we like to build our answers into the play call itself. So that's just not who we are, and there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong. Audibles have been around for forever, and it's a great way to play football. It's just not the way we choose to play. We send them outside, Daniel. I if it's an open B gap, I've seen teams do it, and teams have done it to us, and it's been effective at times. But we send them outside because it actually, I think, helps to run a little bit more. Because if you send them outside and the linebacker tries to match it, and that's the guy reading, then that's the running lane you want. So, you know, we send them outside, but I've seen teams send them. I've seen teams send them inside more often on play action when you're not reading somebody and you're just trying to get them loose down the middle of the field. But in our RPO game, we send them outside to tackle because if the backer expands to carry them, then that's what we want anyways, because we'll just run the football. Yeah, I agree with you too, Harold. It's good to identify those concepts, and it's good to go through them. And it's good in the off season to learn theories and study theories that you may never carry. But I see too many guys that study theories and concepts, and they get so carried away with it that at the end of the day, they just confuse themselves and their players, and they get worse, not better. So you just got to find to me, it's about finding a fine line between what you want to do and what your kids and you are actually capable of doing that's best for your offense. But for your sake, Carol, there's nothing wrong. I mean, shit, especially with all this off time, there's nothing wrong with studying all that. Nothing wrong with recoding your passing game and categorizing things into language that you want to use. That's what every offensive coach should do anyways. You should, put things into your own language that you understand and your kids understand. You don't need to steal the language from somebody else because it gets thank you, Harold. That's what a super chat looks like. There's a monetary donation, and now his name gets put in big bold and highlighted in green. So I also want to say thanks to you guys for joining these chats, because it's I'm doing the same thing you guys are doing. I'm trying to learn, but at the same time, I'm trying to occupy time and stay connected with coaches. So without you guys joining these chats, there would be no live. So it actually should be the other way around, Harold. My thanks should be to you. Yeah, Frank, Coach Andrea, I believe me, there's plenty of people in my football circle I talk to that it's like banging my head against the wall trying to explain to them that they're actually confusing themselves and their players. They don't think they are, but there's a lot of really smart football coaches out there that I talk to that I try and tell them that I think they do a little bit too much, and they try and tell me that we don't do enough. So we just go round and round and round, and at the end of the day, it's your team or your offense, whatever it is. So you're going to do what you want to do. And if they ask my opinion, I tell them. If they don't want to hear my opinion, then don't ask. And I won't give it if they don't want it. But I have several text threads on my phone that I go through, and I just smoke comes out of my ears because these guys are talking about all these concepts and all these different reads for the quarterback and how many different option routes and conversion routes and quarterback's going to set and then reset, and it's all great football. These guys are really, really smart guys that I like talking to and I trust, but sometimes it just confuses the shit out of me, and I know it's got to be confusing the players. So, hey, thanks, Arthur. So for people like me on a YouTube channel that do all their videos for free, when you do chats like this and you finally get to a point where YouTube enables the super chats, it's kind of a way, you know, It's kind of a way for people to say thank you for what you've done and everything else. Thanks, Coach Andre. I appreciate it, but you've paid me enough already. So you've actually paid me cash in hand to talk to you about stuff. So I appreciate it. But it's just a way for your channel when you're doing everything. We talked about this last week. I'm not a PDF guy. I'm not into. A lot of guys ask me for playbooks, and I refuse. I really don't have a playbook per se, but I refuse to send it to anybody anyways because I would rather you watch YouTube videos or get on these live chats and talk to you. If I give you a PDF file with drawings on it and you don't know how I coach it or you don't know my terminology, that PDF file is a waste. So, to sell people playbooks or PDF files for $5 or $10 or all that shit. I mean, yeah, it's a way to make money and it's cool for me to make money, but I don't think a PDF, for my format on YouTube and the way I do things, I want to teach in a virtual setting on a whiteboard where I can hopefully give you the nuggets that you need to implement some of the plays and the blocking schemes and how we teach those things. If I give you a playbook, if you don't know how I coach it, how I teach it, or the terminology I use, you're just studying, you're staring at a picture. I never understood playbook stuff. It's just a pain in the ass to me. Yeah, Coach Gardner, I don't knock playbooks. I don't knock anybody that does them. I don't knock any of that stuff. I have things that I draw for myself and things that I draw for coaches, but when I'm trying to teach other coaches on a platform like social media, I just kind of get I just get kind of ticked off when I see all these PDF files going around with drawings. Like you'll see a million drawings of what Nick Saban and Kirby Smart do in their terminology. Shit, if I don't understand that terminology or I can't teach the way they're teaching, I don't care what Saban playbook or Kirby Smart playbook or Jeremy Pruitt or Will Muschamp. I could have every playbook in the world. I don't know their terminology and I don't know how to teach it. I don't know what the checks are. Those guys have 9 million checks based on splits and motion and formation. So the PDF file is a waste to me. When you run RPOs, do you have any routes built in case they run man and shut it down, or you just have the quarterback give the ball? Well, based on the quarterback's going to do what he does with the ball based on the read key, not the coverage itself. So the quarterback's not going to give it because it's man. He would give it because the guy that we're reading covers somebody in a route, which is the trigger for him to give the ball, if that makes sense. So man stuff starts coming into tendencies and film study and down and distance and understanding what you're getting and having a good guy in the booth that can help you out. And then instead of calling RPOs, you just start calling man beaters if you're getting a lot of that. Anything that blocks 6 in the box. So if we're going to run zone, we're going to run split zone, we're going to run zone ISO, and then we're going to run a wham or a trap theory. And all of those things with 5 linemen and a sniffer will block 6 guys in a box. And then we're going to overhang a 7th or an 8th. So if we want to do it to the single, we're going to run 5-step glance. We're going to run glance corner. We're going to run speed out to the single. If we're going to do it to the twin side, we're going to run hitch with a vertical by 1. We're going to run snag by 1 and a corner by 2. We're going to run fin by 1 and a corner by 2. We're going to run, we'll run some smoke screen or back out stuff just to get a guy the ball in space, depending on who we're trying to get the ball to. So, like I said earlier, we have some key screens where we'll triple option read and end, and then if the quarterback pulls it, he'll then go read an overhang player, and number 2 will back out, and number 1 will block the corner. Well, sometimes we'll tag those to our post-snap RPOs, and we'll read an overhang. So if he fits the run, we'll throw the stand-up or the smoke to get those guys the ball in space. But when we do that, it's a post-snap play. When we run the smokes or the stand-ups, it's a post-snap RPO. It's never a pre-snap access throw. How many running plays do you carry week to week? Do you add a new running play every week? I heard they do it to give other teams. We had 4 run schemes last year that we carried. We carried duo or veer play fraud, which is power without a puller. We carried buck sweep. We carried dart, and we carried power. Those are the 4 run schemes that we carried. Sorry, one of my cats was scratching at the door. So we'll carry wrinkles to those run plays, but I don't create new run plays each week just to run them. To me, that's It's not a good way to go about your business. It's hard enough for us. We have 4 run plays we carry. It's hard enough to get our O linemen and our sniffers and our backs to execute the 4 runs we carry right. I don't want to start teaching new runs. So we'll wrinkle them with RPOs. We'll wrinkle them. We'll run power read. We'll run toss power read. We'll run. There's Lily behind me. We'll run quarterback. Quarterback power, things like that. So we'll wrinkle that, but we won't. We don't add new runs every week. No. Yeah, Joe Salas does some great RPO stuff. He's more of an air raid guy, but he does some good RPO stuff. So he's not a bad. He's not a bad guy to look at. I have a primer. It intentionally has gaps. If I don't get questions, then I know you will. What are you saying, Coach Gardner? You have a primer. It intentionally has gaps. If I don't get questions, then I know you're lost. Yeah, you're talking about with your players and coaches. I get it. I know what you're saying. Hey, guys, I think it's awesome that you guys that are on a live chat can build your social network and add each other on Twitter. That's what it's all about. That's what social networking is all about. So uh, please, on the chat, 100% feel free to follow each other on Twitter and other um, social media platforms. If you're afraid to put your Twitter or your handle, obviously in a live chat, don't do it. But at the same time, I think it's great for guys to. I got a couple new followers last week, and I follow a couple guys. Yeah, Coach Andre, that's a pretty good thought. That's a pretty good thought on plans. Everybody's got one until they're punched in the mouth, and then what do you do? I agree with you 100%. We don't run many choice routes, Coach Gardner. I think it takes too long to practice, and you get too many for us. Too much indecisiveness where the quarterback throws run route and a wide receiver runs a different route, and also we don't build a lot of option or choice routes into our offense per se. So I try to control the routes a little bit more than that. That's a consistent. To me, that's more of a consistency thing over a complexity thing. Option routes and choice routes are really good in a passing game, and they're really good to make sure that based on the coverage you're seeing, you give your receivers answers. But it takes a lot of time to work, and you got to put a lot of time and effort into that. And then I think that affects your run game and other things you want to do. So we do not run any choice routes. No. RPOs are actually speaking as a former college receiver, Jack. I wish RPOs were around in 1991 because most of the time, as a receiver, if you weren't involved in what was going on, you had to block people. And now in the RPO game, a lot of times you're running routes instead of. For us, if we have an RPO to the twin side and an access to the single, all 3 receivers are technically running routes. So none of our receivers are involved in the blocking of the play. So anytime you can get receivers to think they might get the ball and not have to block, it's 100% better for you as a coach and receivers. Yeah, I've seen some of the stuff you've grilled, Coach Gardner. You're pretty good on the grill. Gun 10 personnel with a very athletic quarterback, mostly inside zone, veer, and power read. With an RPO, would you lean towards give throw options and changing them? Um, hey, King, how you doing, bud? No, if you were going to RPO stuff, I mean, I would. The only thing I would do different if you want your quarterback to have the ball and he's a good runner. When you're running RPO stuff, if it's quarterback runs, I would tell him if in doubt, he's going to run and he's only going to throw when he 100% gets a throw read. Just like if I had a really great quarterback, when Tim Tebow and Chris Leak were on the national championship team with the Gators and they ran zone read stuff, they taught them both different. So they taught Chris Leak, you you give the ball until you feel like the DN can tackle the running back. But when they taught Tim Tebow, they taught him you keep it until you feel like the DN can tackle you. So 2 quarterbacks on the same team, and they taught them differently based on their skill set. So they told Chris Leak, give the ball as long as you feel the end can't tackle the quarterback. Tim Tebow, they taught keep the ball as long as you feel the end can't tackle you. So with an athletic quarterback, I would just be changing the terminology and how I speak to him, but the reads would stay the same. Nothing would be different there. If he was really athletic and I was using him in RPOs, then I would tell him, you're only throwing this when you're 100% sure that this guy is committed to the run. If you're in doubt at all, you're going to run the ball. That's how I would coach him. Yeah, I don't really watch enough of the Ravens, but I don't know if they're as much RPO as you think. They're probably more quarterback read game than they are RPO because Lamar Jackson is a mobile guy. That the RPO teams, to me, in the NFL would be more the teams that have pocket quarterbacks that they can't read ends and run with the quarterback, so they read second level players. To me, the Ravens are more of a option read team than they are an RPO team. But I don't watch a lot of the Ravens, so I could be wrong. But I would think the stuff they're doing with Lamar is more based on his running ability than it is his. They want him doing things on the perimeter and running, even though he wants to throw and he's become a very good thrower. I would think if you want to study RPOs in the NFL, if you want to study RPOs in the NFL, there's probably more pocket quarterbacks that, like when Chip Kelly was with the Eagles, Foles and Carson Wentz and guys like that, they're running more RPOs with them because to me that's the choice. If you got a great quarterback that's a great runner, you run more read game. If you got a quarterback that's not a great runner, you run more RPOs. That's just the way I look at it. Yeah, I would think the Saints are good. Drew Brees is built for it. Obviously, he's a very smart player. He understands, defenses. He understands his route concepts, and I would think the only thing is he probably didn't have a lot of work in college on meshing and ball exchanging there. So I think the college quarterbacks coming out now are a little bit. They've been trained a little bit more with mesh mechanics than some of the older NFL quarterbacks, but those guys pick it up pretty easy. We run them all the time, King. It's our offense is built around RPOs. Almost every run we have is RPO'd at some point. So I don't look at them as drive starters. I don't look at them as drive continuers. I just look at them as parts of our offense that we need. Um, I look at it as a part of our offense. For us, it's all about giving the quarterback answers so that we can play at a faster tempo. And our tempo hasn't been great the last 2 or 3 years, but that's more so of a shitty job of me coaching and practice and not getting our offensive players to understand how to line up quickly and how to have a sense of urgency with what we're doing. But our whole terminology, our whole playbook, it's all built around being able to play at a fast tempo because we give the quarterback a toolbox to fix things on the run inside the play without changing plays. So we're trying to call plays as fast as possible. And I don't look for techniques or fronts or coverages. I call plays, and the quarterback's based on the fronts and the coverages. He's got to get the ball where it needs to go based on all that. So that's just how we operate. Yeah, you try and word it. When you're naming plays, you try to word associate them as much as possible. So if you had power plays with P names and, you can name them after states or you can name them after cars or you can name them after NFL teams and, stuff like that. But the one thing I try and explain to coaches all the time is if you're a no huddle offense, usually you hand signal plays or maybe you send plays in on a signboard or some teams use wristbands or whatever. But once you teach a play and you give it a name, if you hand signal it in the game, they don't hear the name. So the name becomes irrelevant outside of the teaching. So, let's just say for argument's sake, we call power, we call power Pennsylvania, and we use the word Pennsylvania. But then when we signal it in, we give a hand signal like double fists or something like that. Once we start signaling the play and they see this for power, they don't hear the word Pennsylvania anymore. So sometimes I think guys get so frustrated with naming plays and terminology, and they kind of paint themselves into a corner with all the terminology. And then all of a sudden, when games start, you hand signal stuff and the terminology kind of goes irrelevant because if the kid doesn't know that that's power and he never hears Pennsylvania, then the naming of the play becomes irrelevant. That's just my opinion. We first started using RPOs about 5 or 6 years ago. We've been running key screens which I don't consider RPOs. We've been running key screens and access throws for almost 10 years now. But I would say post snap read downfield throws with RPOs. I would say probably about 6 years now. I don't know, something like that. I know you can go back probably 12 or 14 years and find guys that were doing it. I just think the term RPO didn't get created until later, but I think there were guys that were ahead of the curve 12, 14 years ago doing it. But for us, the true second level post snap read RPO stuff, probably about the last 6 years. I don't know if Dome has any left. I have a few if you want to buy one, Harold, but Depending on where you live, I would probably have to charge you a little extra for shipping because it's going to cost me to ship it priority mail or something like that. It's going to cost me extra. But if you really want one, I think the problem is we only have small, medium, so you'd have to hope that fits. But um, if you really want one, I think some great. I think I have a gray one left and some maybe a blue one and those fluorescent green ones. But if yeah, I'll shoot you a DM on or shoot me a DM on Twitter with what color you want, and then put it up there again. Put your Twitter up there again, Coach Greenfield, so I can search it real quick. And then usually, Coach Greenfield, it would be like a PayPal deal or a Cash App deal or something like that, and send the PayPal or the Cash App, and then I'll go to the post office and usually cost priority mail like $8 or $10 to ship it. So that's the only reason. That's the only thing I hate about. I haven't really found. I've been talking to some. Um, I've been talking to some different companies about maybe creating a Play Fast store that opens every other weekend, and we have some items on there like hats and shirts and things like that. I've worked with the stuff on YouTube, which is Teespring, and I just got to get better at using it. But I've talked to some companies about opening up stores maybe twice a month, every other weekend or something like that, and open a store up for a weekend for people to buy stuff, and then the store shutting down because when you're doing things individually, like myself as a small business, and you're not in the apparel business, for me to get hats and then ship them, it costs too much for you to buy the hat because I have to ship it. So that's just my opinion. And so I've been talking to some different companies about maybe working out a deal where every 2 weeks or two weekends a month we open up a Play Fast store and guys can go to there and run and buy stuff from there. So all right, now I'm getting lost. Like I said, I first heard about it RPO'S probably 8 years ago, somewhere along there. When running an RPO, do you motion into 3x1 or 2x2? We don't use a lot of motion because I want my quarterback to see pictures and see clear pictures. I think when you motion, shift, and trade, I think it's good to create advantages, leverage, and numbers on the defense, but it changes pictures so much for the quarterback. So when we're RPOing a conflict defender, excuse me, if I'm RPOing a conflict defender, I want it. I want the quarterback to know who the conflict defender is. If I motion and it changes the coverage, that changes the conflict defender. So I'm not a big fan. Excuse me. I'm not a big fan of shifting or motioning when using RPOs. I don't think Urban Meyer used a lot of RPOs at Utah. I think he used a lot of quarterback read game with Alex Smith. It was a lot of zone read and stand up and smoke screens off that. I don't think Utah was throwing a lot of post snap RPOs down the field. That's just my opinion from studying Utah and knowing when they were at Utah what they did, and then when they came to Florida what they did. So it is too easy to make it work. Which part is too easy to make it work? Setting up a store or yeah, most people would consider that usually thin when you're getting that 5 step in or that fast in from the number one receiver, usually with a seam read or a vertical by two. When you get into level stuff, you can get into double fins or you can get into a fin with a 10-yard dig behind it. So small wide receiver, and I can start block pretty well. Oh, at least I think. Jack, I played receiver in college at 5'9", 148 pounds was the biggest I ever was. I was 137 pounds my freshman year of college. Luckily, we could cut in college. Stalk blocking is more about staying in somebody's way, keeping yourself and being tenacious to keep yourself between you and the ball carrier. So the best you can do is show them in practice that you're not afraid to stick your nose in there. You're not afraid to stay in people's way and just prove yourself in practice. That's the best way to do it. What, bud? What is that?
It's you live.
Oh yeah. Um, yeah, the hat part should be pretty easy, Coach Greenfield, but it's a little bit more difficult than you think. So Dome Hats, that makes all our hats, and they're our hat sponsor. They made a bunch of PlayFest hats, but obviously we didn't know how many would sell, so we didn't make too many. But then when they start selling and people want them, then you got to go back and make them again. They've obviously been impacted by the coronavirus because they've had factories in China and other places that have shut down. So they've been affected with how quickly they can produce. See about how quickly they can produce stuff. So we're going to find a way to make it work. There's been enough people interested in PlayFest, merchandise, hats, and shirts and stuff like that. We're going to find a way to make it work. Ken Leonard, head coach in Springfield, Illinois, an all-time leader in Illinois history, and his son Derek was a guy he wanted to study. Yeah, I've heard the name Derek Leonard before. I've never heard of Ken Leonard, but everybody's learned from somewhere, even Urban Meyer. So everybody borrows information and steals information. We all learn from somewhere. So tip your hat to all those guys that everybody's learned from, because that's all we do is learn. So yeah, if you're a good blocker, then you're always gonna find ways. To me, I tell receivers all the time, you want to play, catch the football and block people. It doesn't matter, if you're not the fastest guy in the world, if you catch the football when it's thrown to you and you block people, you're gonna find a way to play. I did a video on three musts at playing receiver, and those are two of them: catch the football when it's thrown and block people. So if you can block, Jack, you're gonna find a way on the field, and God bless you if you can, because I was an awful stock blocker. Yeah, Arthur, that's 100% true. It is an attitude, and it was something that, as a smaller guy, I was never really very good at. I actually played safety in high school, played both ways, and I wasn't bad as a safety physically. But it's a little bit different when you are, fitting things and coming downhill and being able to get all 138 pounds moving in the direction. Stalk blocking is about angles and leverage and setting your feet up the right way and not attacking too aggressively so that you whiff, and keeping that defender, keeping yourself between the defender and the ball carrier. And stalk blocking is just being a pain in the ass is really what it is. It is physical to an extent, but it's more about being just a pain in the ass and staying in between a defender and a ball carrier. So I 100% agree that it's an attitude. Yeah, Jack, I think most coaches think that way, but I think most coaches think that way because a lot of us have teams where not everybody gives effort and not everybody blocks and tackles. If you get to a point where all the best players can block and tackle, then it's going to come down to size and talent and speed and other things. But I think you'll always find a place. If you can catch the ball and block, you'll always find a place to play. Yeah, if you can volunteer or do an internship at a high school or even a junior high school while you're in college, then that gives you a chance to get your degree and study the game more and get some coaching experience under your belt, and then it makes you more hireable down the road. Um, are you talking about where the quarterback would pull off of a defensive end read and go to the perimeter and make it look like he's taking the ball to the perimeter, and then you get a crack and go or a stalk and go? Those Auburn beat Alabama with it a couple of years ago when they had Nick Marshall. Those have been around for a while, and those are just based on athletic quarterbacks getting to the perimeter and guys stalk blocking. Again, that to me isn't an RPO. That to me is a shot play where off of a DN off of a DN read, that's more of an option play. You pull and get to the perimeter, and then when you think that you've got the defense baited enough, you call the shot play, and now the quarterback can throw that ball downfield. So um, that to me isn't as much of an RPO as it is more of an option shot play. But you can, it's a good play when it works for sure. And if the defense is getting blocked the whole time and that quarterback's pulling and running to the perimeter, um, then I think it's a great play. But in essence, the defense can take that play away because all you got to do is have the defensive end sit and not play the quarterback. And now they've got to give the inside zone and they'll never get to the RPO. So I think the defense can kind of dictate how good of a play that is, in my opinion. Yeah, don't ever worry about what your teammates think, number one. Number two, you just got to be you and be the best teammate you can be. Don't worry about being the best player you can be. Worry about being the best teammate you can be. And if you're a good teammate, people will find out. Trust me, it's hard in high school because kids are immature. I've coached high school football for 20 years. I get it. I understand. And and it's a tough deal, but you just got to do you, Jack, and understand that eventually somebody like yourself that is mature enough to study football and try and learn football is probably head and shoulders maturity wise above your teammates. So you just do you, worry about Jack, and be the best teammate you can be to help your team win. Arthur, Dave Clawson is a sore spot for me. He was a head coach at Fordham University in the Bronx when I was a high school player, and they did not recruit me. So Dave Clawson is a very good football coach, but it's kind of a sore spot for me because they didn't recruit me to play at Fordham. So I still, even though I had a great college career at St. John's University in Queens and um, did a lot of statistically had some really outrageous numbers for a Division III wide receiver. So I'm not totally upset, but it's the third week in a row somebody's got to get on a live chat and use it as their time. You insecure much, Bookie, or parents don't give you enough time in the day, or yeah, well, I mean, for me, Coach Gardner, that one was, I was always undersized. I felt like I was a decent high school player. I knew I really probably wasn't a full scholarship player, um, but I felt like I was a good player, and schools like that never even batted an eye at me or whatever. So, um, at the end of the day, uh, when it came time, when it's all said and done, 5 years later, and I have a chance to break Jerry Rice's touchdown reception record, and I put the numbers up that I put up in small college football. At the end of the day, I got my master's degree from St. John's and started my life coaching. And but at the end of the day, they probably recruited the right guys, and I probably played where I belonged, and I'm happy that I did. But if you're going to be an athlete and a competitor and a coach, you've got to have some grudges that you hold. I don't hold a grudge to where I wish, I don't wish bad things on people, but I mean, hell, I'm competitive like everybody else, and they wouldn't recruit me, so I held a little bit of a grudge. But Dave Clawson's a great coach. I study some stuff that he does. I don't hold a big enough grudge that if he's doing good things, I won't use him. But that name bothers me a little bit, and then Dan Mullen at Florida bothers me a little bit because my senior year of college, I was playing in I was the MVP of a championship game, and he was an assistant coach at Wagner College in Staten Island, and now I'm still coaching high school football for 20 years, and he's a big time Division I coach making millions of dollars. So the Dave Clawson one bothers me a little bit, and Dan Mullen is a little bit of a sore spot for me too. Bookie, you got to get attention some other way, bud. I feel for you, my man. I know it's a tough time with coronavirus and everything else, but if you got to get on a YouTube live chat and put comments up there for attention, play some video games or do something else. Yeah, I mean, the NFL is, I live in Jacksonville, and the Jaguars have cost themselves probably, um, who knows how many years by missing on draft picks and everything else. So you're going to miss all the time. I get it. I mean, you're making your opinion based on variables like size and speed and strength numbers and combine numbers. And at the end of the day, when you put a film on, somebody can play or they can't. If a guy, here's what bothers me about the NFL. You take a guy that has a 4-year career at a position, and he's a dominant player at that position for 4 years, and he doesn't run the right time at the combine, and all of a sudden his draft grade falls. Why take a bunch of drills done in a 4-day period and override a 4-year career of playing the game? To me, I'd be drafting guys that play the freaking game. That's what, if I ever got that chance, that's what I would do. And as a college coach, if I was recruiting, I'd recruit guys that play the game. Obviously, if they're 6'5", 280 pounds and run a 4.6, yes, that makes them a 5-star. I get it. But I wouldn't be afraid of somebody that's a little bit slower or undersized if he's got 3 or 4 years of high school highlights where he's a dominant player playing good levels of high school football. I'm going to take good football players. You win with good football players. You don't win with stats. You don't build teams and win games with bench press numbers and 40 times. You win games and you build teams with good football players. That's how you do it. Now, if I started doing my own podcast, so I started listening to some. But if I go to podcasts, I'm going to go either to Chris Jericho or Stone Cold right away. I'm a wrestling guy, and when I listen to podcasts, I want to get outside the realm of football. So, wrestling, golf, or music podcasts are going to be the ones that I listen to. Now we mix them up. We like to take our two receiver side. We might have 4 or 5 combinations for RPOs that we like, and we can tag them to any of our runs that are that can block 6 guys and read a 7th guy. And then to the single, we have the 3 route combinations that we like, and we tag those with any of our RPO run game, any of our runs that are conducive to RPOs. So we don't really mix and match them per se. We keep the combinations the same, and then we just tag them to the end of our runs. Furthest I've gone in the playoffs is 3rd round in the state of Florida, which is 2 games. You can't even use slang the right way, Book. I feel so bad for this guy. I'm a Sting fan. Always been a Sting fan. That's my favorite. For me, right now, currently, I'm a big AJ Styles fan. I love Kenny Omega. Let's see. Yeah, for me right now, it's AJ Styles and Kenny Omega probably. But growing up, it was always Sting. I don't have secrets, Bookie. There's no secrets in football. Yeah, vlogs about football. I can't cook, Coach Gardner, so I would have to watch your vlogs on football and cooking. I'm not a guy that can cook, so Mania was great for the entertainment purposes of what they had to do and how they had to do it. Anybody that critiques a company trying to entertain people and taking their biggest event of the year and doing it without fans is just an idiot. But if you're a wrestling fan, you got to understand that everybody's going to bash the WWE. It doesn't matter what they do. So, if you just got to understand that WWE is the big fish. Everybody goes after them, so everybody's going to critique them. But I think for what they had to do, it was absolutely phenomenal. Yeah, USA Football does great stuff. I've written an article with them and some stuff that in the past, and so Bill Curry would probably be a great interview, I imagine. So I just when I'm away from YouTube videos or Twitter or football in general, I like to do some other things, and wrestling, music, and golf are my big 3 things. Yeah, King Boneyard was great because it becomes a cinematic type deal, and with somebody going up in age like the Undertaker, you can shoot it in different segments, so he doesn't have to do a 15 or 20-minute match that he can't do anymore. So obviously, you can add storytelling to it and movie stuff. And yeah, I disagree too, Harold. I don't think you have to bash things, but at the same time, I think everybody's always going to bash the WWE, and that's the mark that everybody's going after. And they're the big fish, and even fans, they always, they want to have a say in everything. And when they get bored, they want to have a say in storylines, and they want to have a say in this and that. And just sit back and be entertained. And if you don't like it, don't watch it. But I get a kick out of how guys in the WWE that fans can't attract themselves to, all of a sudden can go to AEW and be big superstars and big names. I mean, Jack Swagger was never anything more than a mid-carder. People never really got behind him in WWE. He's a good talent. He's a good performer, but he was never a draw in WWE. He goes to AEW, and now he's, a big-time part of what they're doing. Or, guys like that, to me, it's just like, it's just to me, it's more of a, I think it's more of a positive for WWE than it is a negative. When people go over there and they say the WWE holds people down, well, those guys couldn't draw. Vince McMahon's a moneymaker. Those guys couldn't draw. If they drew, they would have drew into WWE. They didn't draw. That's why they had the spot on the card they had. And now they only draw because, they were from WWE, and instantly they're, the most marketable guys on the planet. So that's just my take on it. Yeah, I've done a bunch of bear stuff on YouTube, Coach Gardner. We use bear as a pressure now more so than a front, but I played it as a defense for a year or 2 and taught it as a defense, and so I've done some bear stuff on YouTube. Which question, Jack, do you want me to repeat? We don't have anything that we do in quads right now. I think there's a lot of good quarterback run stuff that you can do in quads with probably tied more to screen game stuff and numbers. And I think when you're using quads, it's more a numbers type deal where if you got the numbers, you throw it out there. If they have the numbers matched, then you probably have numbers in a run game. So um, I'm not a big quads guy, but I've seen people do that. Um, and then 3x1, you just get limited with some of the run game stuff unless your quarterback is involved in a run game. You lose a lot of your. I'm a big guy. I want six blockers. I want isolation theories. I want kick out pull theories like power and counter and things like that. So when you go to one back out of trips, it ends up all becoming off of zone or draw type stuff where you're running stick draw and things like that. So, I'm not a big 3x1 RPO guy. That's just me. Our receivers are probably our receivers are probably blocking less than 30% of the time, usually on perimeter runs. So if we run buck sweep to the front side, they got to block. You got to get a great crack block by your slot receiver. And then when we run jet stuff or power read stuff, the guys on the front side of those plays, anything that goes to the perimeter on the front side, those guys have to block. But for our receivers, they're involved in RPOs or running access gifts probably 70-75% of the time. I think Clemson has had some good offensive coaches, but they've recruited the right players and um, they put the players in good situations, and they've done a good job with the quarterback playing to his strengths based on who it is. So they've had a couple really dynamic quarterbacks in different ways. You can go all the way back to Woody Dantzler, and he was dynamic as an athlete, and then Deshaun was a little bit of both. And Trevor Lawrence, obviously, now is a great athlete, but he's a really good thrower, but he can pull it and run it. So I think Clemson has great plays. Yeah, you gotta put your hands out if you're gonna blindside crack somebody. You can't lead with a shoulder or anything else. So if you're gonna block somebody, blindside or crack somebody, your hands have to be out in front. So that's a safety deal, trying to take all that stuff out of the game and keep people healthy. And so yes, Jack, that is something in our state that you have to be aware of as a receiver. You can't go in there and maul anybody anymore on a crack block. Special teams too. You got to teach kids on special teams because you can't really peel and blindside people. Interceptions on defense, you got to teach kids that as well because you can't peel and blindside. So any situation in football where a kid might be a blocker in open spaces, you got to teach them that rule. But that's on us as coaches to teach our players that rule. You can't expect them in the heat of the moment to, you know, kids aren't going to turn down contact most of the time if they're good players. So um, I don't know if I really gained any advantages, Harold. The only advantage I'd say I gained is just a steady audience that I've been building for 7 years, and having that loyal following in the audience. There's been hundreds of guys that have popped up and done YouTube stuff since I've been doing it, and a lot of guys are having success. Some guys don't have success. I think the one thing that keeps my channel a little bit fresher and helps me stay ahead of the curve, even though I've been doing it for so long, and even though I'm not a big production value guy and I'm not a big edit guy, I think the thing that keeps me ahead of the game a little bit is a lot of the other guys doing YouTube stuff are specific to one side of the ball. Some of them are specific to one system on offense or one system on defense, and um, I'm not really specific to anything. Play fast football is an ideology. It's not necessarily it's not it's not an offensive system or a defensive system. It's more of an ideology. So, having the ability to talk offense, defense, special teams, practice structure, other things in coaching, I think I can spread the wealth as far as the knowledge a little bit more, and that gives me an advantage in the YouTube setting. Then, it's hard after doing this for 7 years. It's hard for me to come up with content to do videos on and try not to repeat content that I've done in the past. So I can't imagine how these guys that are air raid guys or wing T guys or 4 3/4 guys or whatever they may be. It's got to be hard to keep coming up with content when you only have one system that you're talking about. And I think it limits your audience. I think if you have a channel that is specific to RPO or flexbone or single wing or whatever, I think it's good, and you're going to get a devout following of people that want to or care to be involved in that structure or that system. But I don't think you're going to draw viewers outside that system. So for me, for play fast football, I think the thing that's kept me ahead of the curve a little bit is when you go to my channel, you're going to get offense, you're going to get defense, you're going to get special teams, you're going to get practice structure. You're going to get read game, you're going to get RPOs, you're going to get passing game, you're going to get talks about quarterback play, you're going to get talks about O-line protection, you're going to get talks about 4-2-5, 3-3-5. You're going to get pressure talks, you're going to get zone pressure talks, you're going to get man pressure talks. So I think having the ability to talk, multiple things keeps me ahead of the curve as far as YouTube is concerned. What's your practice structure for getting the reps in RPO? We talked about this earlier. I do team RPO segments for 10 minutes where, we're only going to run RPOs in that period, and that's all we're going to focus on is RPOs and access throws and, the built-in multiple toolbox type plays that have all the answers built in, and the quarterback's got to make the right decision. Then we got to give him different looks in the scout group that's going to make him do different things with the ball. So we got to dictate those looks from the scout team, but that's how we do it. We do some half line stuff with it as well. But if you're going to run RPOs, you got to put them in your team segments and make sure that your quarterback reads it right, which means you got to make sure that the scout plays it the way you want him to play it so that the quarterback can do different things with the ball if you expect them to do different things with the ball Friday night. I wouldn't say negatively, Coach Gardner. The only thing that it's done is, you get some comments from time to time where, people, when you lose, people will say, "Oh, we just beat the YouTube coach," or "Oh, we just beat the play fast guy," or "Oh, you do all these videos and you don't win enough games." So I wouldn't say pressure. It just gives, people that want to run their mouth a little bit more fuel to the fire to kind of make jokes about it. And, it's funny, a lot of the guys that make jokes about stuff like that, when I held my clinic, there are a lot of guys that would make jokes about stuff like that and then send me side messages to say, "Hey, you need any speakers at your clinic?" So, all those things have come full circle. When I first started doing the YouTube stuff, guys were making fun of it and guys were joking about it. And eventually some of those same guys asked me if they could be on the channel, or asked me if they could do a video on the channel, or, asked me if they could speak at the clinic. So, you just keep on keeping on. And I wouldn't say pressure, though. The pressure is what you make of it. Yeah, we can still do two-a-days. You got to have certain breaks in between the practices, and really the thing for us is the amount of contact that we can have on any given week. Live contact is the deal. So two-a-days are not necessarily completely illegal. They've changed a little bit within the rules of what you need to do in those two-a-days, but the days of going two or three and just beating the shit out of each other like we did in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, those days are gone. So, and they're probably gone for the better. I don't think you need to do any of that stuff. Even though I went through it, and most of the people that are in their mid to late 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, hell, we all went through it. And there was a time in a day where if you drank water during practice, you were considered soft. So, health and safety is so much better than it was. The game of football is in such a better place than it used to be. And I think some of those things are borderline barbaric and Neanderthal-like in thinking. And I don't think you need to do all that to be tough and physical and win football games personally. For us, this year will be a little bit different because we probably won't have spring football. But when we have spring football and then we have 7 weeks of summer workouts, when we start, I don't do a lot of two-a-days in the summer because we already have 90% of the stuff we want to do installed. So we don't do a lot of two-a-days in the summer. Yeah, practice in the morning is okay, but as a coach, you got to think about how wet the ground is, and then your balls get soaking wet, and then they get waterlogged, and you got to go through a million balls. So, as a coach, I don't like going real early in the morning because of the dew on the grass, and then you get soaked. But if you're going to coach in Florida, going in the morning is better because in the afternoon in the summer, you're going to get a thunderstorm every day. So you're going to get lightning and chased off the field. So morning practices in Florida are better. Thanks, Stu. I appreciate it. I've heard the name Roy Kidd at Eastern Kentucky, so obviously he must have been a hell of a coach. And I appreciate the compliment. And I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. Um, I don't know. Some of the videos that I like the best don't get a lot of views. And the one thing I learned about YouTube is videos get views based on the thumbnail and the topic. So if you put a buzzword out there that everybody wants to learn about, those videos seem to get more views. But if you have something out there that people search and it's a buzzword and it's in the searches and your channel is big enough that you're part of the YouTube algorithm for searches. It's that's how you get the most views. A lot of the videos that I think are really great videos from my standpoint end up not getting a lot of views, and a lot of videos that I think I didn't do the greatest job get a lot of views. So um, I would probably say of all of them, maybe the power read stuff I did originally 6, 7 years ago when we were running a lot of quarterback power and a lot of jet power read and tailback power read stuff. That was probably one of the bigger ones as far as views. And then our original 4-2-5 stuff and defending trips formations. I'm the proudest of the early videos that I did because when I first started, I had no idea if anybody would watch. I had no idea if anybody would like my personality on camera. I had no idea if people would gravitate towards my pedagogy or um, how I teach things. And obviously speaking in public on a camera, we all have idiosyncrasies. So I say okay and all right a million times in my videos, and I know I say it, and I try not to say it, but it's just something that once I start talking in front of it's like a speech class. Once you start talking in front of a public audience, it's just something that comes up. So I always try to do a better job with trying to eliminate how many times I say okay or all right. But I'm really proudest of my earliest videos because, like I said, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea if people would like them, and the fact that they had success led me to keep doing it, and then the fact that I kept doing it led it, to keep growing. And now it's probably, I would think it's arguably the largest high school coaching channel in the country, if not one of the largest. So I'm pretty proud of that fact. Um, Yeah, that's a tough one, Jack. I don't know. I was a big Dolphin fan growing up, so I'm a huge Don Shula guy. I think I respect the hell out of Nick Saban and Belichick for what they've accomplished. Um, I'm a big fan of Mike Leach because of how different he is. Uh, I like guys that are a little bit different. I like guys that are a little bit brash or bold in what they're doing and how they're approaching it. But as far as a favorite all time, probably Don Shula, maybe I would say. I coach at a school, Orange Park High School in Orange Park, Florida, which is about 30 minutes south of Jacksonville, is where I currently coach. Uh, Chris, I've been a head high school coach for 20 years at three different programs, and Orange Park High School is the current program that I coach at right now. Yeah, Mike Leach is great. His interviews are great. Very intelligent guy, very different guy. So I appreciate the fact that um, he's that different. So I like him for that reason as well. All right. Any other schemes schematically or anything else you guys want to talk about? Going on about an hour and 28 minutes now. So Jack, it's funny that you mentioned that about Mike Leach because I was going to law school. I'm a criminal justice undergrad, and I was going to go to law school. And then I figured out that I didn't have it in me to do 6 or 5 or 6 more years of school. So I became a football coach, but I actually wanted to be a lawyer too. Yeah, I'll still do these chats, Harold. I didn't know how easy it was to get on YouTube Live because, again, technology wise, I'm not very good. I'm not good with computers. I'm not good with software. So once I figured out how easy it was to set these chats up, um, it's a good platform for me. It fits who I am, how I like to be, and I don't. For me, I'm just blessed with the ability to see the game in my mind and answer questions. I don't need a whiteboard. I don't need the only thing I need is people to be clear about the questions they're asking because sometimes terminology and things can be confusing. But once I'm clear about the question, I can answer it without having to draw it. I think I can speak eloquently enough on topics that uh, hey, I appreciate you being on, bro. Enjoy it, bro. So yeah, YouTube Live's a good platform. Yeah, Swing Your Sword was a very good book. I think you got to do both, Coach Walk. I think depending on type of quarterback you have, and to put pressure on defenses, I think you got to be able to read ends and even interior guys to affect how they play. And then I think you have to read second level players and run RPOs. So we're going to carry both all the time. And then depending on the makeup of our quarterbacks, if they're better athletes, we're going to run more read game. If they're better throwers, we're going to run more RPO stuff. I've got a question for you. Enjoy it, bro. If I'm not good at any of this stuff, do you always log on to streams that where people are not good at what they're doing? Most of the time, people watch things that they like or they think people are good at. So for you to log on to a live stream to tell somebody they're not good at it kind of doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah, apparently a lot of these people. This has been every week on a chat that I've done so far. Well, if it's not good to you, what are you still doing on commenting? That's not. It's a little bit ignorant when something's not good, but you still watch it and you comment. But enough with you. Um, yeah, we ran buck sweep, which is pin and pull in theory. So yes, we've run pin and pull before. I am a khaki sneakers and collared shirt polo guy on the sideline. I was gonna, I was actually gonna end it, but now that you want me to end it, I'm gonna stay on longer. So thank you, Demonte. I appreciate it. So enjoy it, bro. I want to thank you for giving me the motivation to keep the chat going a little bit longer. Just because you want it ended, I'm now going to stay on longer. Yeah, Coach Gardner, I'll try and get it out there either in your notifications if your notifications are on, then you'll know we're doing a chat, or I'll put it on Twitter or somewhere else the next time we go live. So been doing it about once or twice a week. See you, bro. I enjoyed it. No pun intended. Yeah, we can do one about screens. We're not a very good screen team. We carry a few, but I just haven't done a good enough job coaching it. So, we carry stand ups and tunnels and slow screens to running backs, and something that I've got to do a better job. I can't stand wearing shorts as a coach during games, and I can't stand. Um, I would never tell somebody else what to wear, so I'm not. Hey, I'm not a. I'm not. If a guy wants to wear shorts and that's what he wants to wear and he's comfortable wearing, then that's fine. I agree with you, Jack. I don't think shorts is a professional look for a coach, but I've lost to a lot of guys that wear shorts, and there's been a lot of great football coaches that wear shorts that are great, not only great coaches but great people and great for the game of football. So I'm not going to say anything about guys wearing shorts. It's just not me. First progression you teach a young high school quarterback. The first thing I would worry about is the mesh with the running back before anything else. Can't have the ball on the ground. So if you're talking about a young quarterback with RPOs, the first thing I'm going to worry about is the mesh with the running back. Then we're going to progress to understanding who the conflicted defender is in each play. And then we're going to progress to the actual reads. Is he in the run fit? Yes or no? Can you throw the ball? Yes or no? So always start with the mesh part first, excuse me, because taking care of the football is the most important. Arthur, I'd love to have you on the next one. You asked a lot of good questions and there was a lot of good input. So please join everyone that we have. Going to read somebody, why would you choose to do a pro over an option play? Like what's it? Do you mean an RPO over an option play or they're both option plays to me, Rocco, if um, the Uh, the last 2 or 3 years, probably Oklahoma, Jack. Before that, probably Baylor, and before that, probably Oregon. Um, so for me, Rocco, my quarterback ability is going to be number one. If my quarterback is a really good runner, I'm going to run more read option plays than I am RPOs. If my quarterback isn't a very good runner, I'm going to run more RPOs than I am read option plays. But in the last 6 years, I've carried them both. I've carried read option plays and RPOs. And I mentioned this earlier on the stream, but RPOs to me is option. It's the same play. It's just a different manner of how you're doing it. Dallas Fort Worth, I love it. Started running the Bear in the early 90s. So can you please help me find your input on the Bear that you just spoke of? I have a couple videos on Bear stuff. It's mostly talking about 5-man pressure and playing man free behind it, and talking about versus 21 personnel, how we vice the tight end with a C gap player and bring the guy off the edge wider than that and stuff like that. So I used to have a 46 book way back in the day, but moving around and doing some different things, I can no longer find it. But I used to have a 46 book either by Buddy Ryan or Rex Ryan or one of those guys. So study the old Bears from 84, 85, or study the old Buddy Ryan stuff and the Rex Ryan stuff. And then, there's so much Bear front still out there, but there's so much 20 and 10 personnel and 11 personnel that you don't see it fully like you used to when it was in vogue with the Chicago Bears in the mid 80s. So that's where I'd look at old fashioned NFL stuff for more Bear stuff. Where are you wanting the running back to run if he gets the ball between the guards? It depends on the play we're running. The running back's going to run the play based on the scheme, whether it's inside zone or power or whatever the scheme is. He's going to run the scheme, and then we're going to take it from there. So he's going to fit his runs and make his reads based on the scheme that we're running, not necessarily the who we're reading in the RPO. Yeah, Jack, you become more of an option team. You run more zone read stuff, and then you run more like jet power read stuff, and then you run more predetermined quarterback runs off of jet motion. So quarterback counter or quarterback dart, full flow jet motion, faking something on a perimeter run and running quarterback runs off of that. So if your quarterback is a better runner, then you gear in more option run plays than you do RPOs. If he's a better thrower, then you run RPOs. They're both option philosophies. They both involve reading people. It's just the end result of what he does after he reads somebody. So if you want him to run, read an end or a down lineman and have him run. If you want him to throw, read a second level player, a linebacker, or a safety, and then have him throw after that. Yes, what I consider. All right, here's the story with the duo play for me. When I started wanting to run veer blocking with a zone read theory is when I first started watching Nevada with Colin Kaepernick, however many years ago that was. I didn't like the way our high school kids blocked inside zone, so I thought a gap scheme was better for us. We were also a power team and a counter team, so we were a big gap scheme team. So I wanted to incorporate a gap scheme into a zone read play. I first learned it as the Zier play, which is a combination of zone and veer. It was veer blocking, but it had some zone read principles. So I learned it as a Zier play. This past year, I had a player, cramp, Charlie horse hamstring. This past year, I had a player sign with Liberty, and I took him up to spring ball with Hugh Freeze. And I was talking to those guys, and I was asking them what they carry in their run game. And the offensive coordinator told me, they do a lot of stuff off of duo. And I said, well, I really don't know what that is. Can you explain it to me? And he drew it up on the board, and it's the Zier play that we've been running. And I didn't know it as duo at the time, but we had been running it for the last 8 to 10 years. And when he drew it up, I said, oh, that's the Zier play we've been running. He said, yeah, it's duo in NFL terminology, and it's basically power without a puller. And so that's basically what duo is. If you think of Zier as veer blocking with zone read principles, that's basically what duo is. Duo is a gap scheme without a puller. So it's basically power in essence without the puller. And then instead of kicking out, and we do kick out the end sometimes, but instead of kicking them out, you'd read them. So it's a power scheme without a puller, and then you read the end instead of kicking them out. So, but the last couple of years in our RPOs, we'd run the duo scheme and kick the end and block 6 in the box and RPO off it. So it's been a base play for us for a long time. I just didn't know it was called duo, and so you learn something new every year. I thought duo was a new play, and I found out it's just a different word for a play we had been running for 8 or 10 years that I got from Nevada way back in the day. Yeah, we're always going to play to the strengths of our offense, but I like to incorporate the reason we run what we run on offense is because I feel like depending on the players that I get in high school, I can modify the offense around those players. The one thing I don't want to do is change offenses every 2 years because of my players in high school. So I know a lot of guys use that philosophy because they say you got to fit your offense to your players, and I agree 100%. But as a head coach, I would rather fit my scheme around the ability to use different players. So that's why we've been a 20 personnel spread tempo team that carries a lot of downhill hardball runs and RPOs and read games. So if my quarterback's a runner, then that's what I'm going to do. If he's a thrower, then I'm going to do something different. If I got great backs, I'm going to our offense, we carry hard ball runs, we carry power, we usually carry counter, we carry perimeter runs like jet and jet read stuff. And so if we get a great O line like we had my most successful year record wise, we went 9-1 and we averaged 480 yards a game on offense. We ran for 350 and threw for 130 and had a quarterback that was a 1,000-yard rusher and a 1,000-yard passer. And we were really good up front. Had an offensive line that went to an offensive guard that went to Kentucky, and we were about 275 to 300 across the ball and just mauled people. So we ran all downhill physical gap schemes from 10 personnel and 20 personnel, and then we threw quick game and about 4 or 5 drop back theories. So I like the way I've kind of built our offense, and we're changing some things a little bit, but I build it around knowing that when I get certain players, I can just morph the offense into something a little bit different. But I don't go from wing T one year, and then when the personnel comes in the next year, we're spread 4 wide, and then 2 years later, we're flex bone triple option. I don't believe in that. We've run some stuff where we've linemen. Oh, my daughter. Hello, Macy. How are you? Um, we've run some stuff where we put linemen out there, Heaven Heller Boston or Swinging Gate, Lonesome Polecat, whatever you want to call it. Yes, you should be my biggest fan, I would hope, Mason. And so we've run that stuff before. My favorite trick play in football is anything that involves multiple handoffs or multiple pitches or tosses. So any double reverses, double reverse passes, or passes down the field that involve multiple laterals or pitches are my favorite trick play. I just got done telling somebody, Macy, that if you're going to watch somebody's live stream and you don't have anything good to say, you shouldn't be watching. Yes, I know who Kevin Kelly is. Yes, I've heard of Pulaski. And we have a friend of ours now that my daughter is on the feed. My daughter has friends that own a dance company that she dances with who are related to a player on the Pulaski football team. Almost got Kevin Kelly to speak at my Playfast clinic this year. So, yes, I am. Bye, Macy. Yes, I am very familiar with Pulaski Academy. Um, he has a different mindset. He's a very smart individual. He takes a lot of chances that statistically have proven to be the right choice to make. They use their percentages in field position well, going for it and not punting. He's a very smart guy, and he's hired, and he's had a lot of Ivy League graduates study numbers and things. So very unique individual, very smart guy. Yes, that's Lily in the background. Macy's sitting on my desk. Yes. Um, very smart guy, very good at what he does. But they throw the ball very well. They throw it vertically down the field very well. So he is true to who he is. He is very smart with what he does, and he does what he does well. And not many people in the coaching business do it better than him. So that's Lily right there. Yeah, I think more guys should use analytics rather than relative thinking and probability. I shouldn't. Now, probability is the wrong word. I'm sorry, but too many guys in the NFL coach by a book, and you punt when it's this situation, and you go for it when it's this situation. And I think he broke the mold statistically by proving that the more you go for it on 4th and 2, the more likely you are to get it. And when you don't get it, the average number of points that the opponent scores makes it worth your time as opposed to punting. The average amount of points you give up when you actually punt and field position. And then the analytics of onside kicks and how often you can recover onside kicks. And if you don't recover them, the starting field position as opposed to kicking the ball deep. So all his stuff makes perfect sense. And if you've got the guts to do it, but he's a good football coach too. So that other stuff, I think that other stuff is what made him famous per se, because it was different. But I think what makes him good as a football coach is the fact that he's a really good football coach. So, all right, guys, now that some of those Enjoy It Bro and the other trolls have got off the site, we've been doing it for an hour and 45 minutes. So I appreciate it. If you got any last second scheme questions, ask them now because I am going to end this stream in about a minute or two. You can catch it again probably the beginning of next week, next Monday or Tuesday, or maybe over the weekend. If everyone likes the video live stream, it will help push the content up the YouTube charts and we'll get more views. Just to fun. Yeah, so afterwards, if you go on or if you click the thumbs up button or whatever, it kind of all the likes and the thumbs up drive it up the YouTube algorithm chart. And then when people search and other things, so it's all about that. So I appreciate that, Jason Lewis, very much. If you can give it a thumbs up or like it or anything else, I'd appreciate it. Have a good night, King. Stay safe. Coach Walk, thank you very much for joining. Jack, thank you for joining and just keep working hard, buddy. And when we get out of this, football will be there. And when it's there, go out and do your thing. Mike Kilgore, thank you very much. Robert Mendoza, thank you very much. Stay safe, guys. Do the things that you're allowed to do. Stay away from the things that you're not allowed to do. And let's all work together to get past this thing so we can get back to life as usual. Appreciate you guys. I'll catch you next time. Remember, you won't play well until you play fast. Thanks for everything you do for Play Fast Football. I'm out.